It is a very, very good thing if you want to get married and have children. It is what makes civilization happen. It is women civilizing men and women bringing up children, and it is men protecting women and men protecting children, and that basic math is the foundation of Western civilization. That basic math is the foundation of any workable civilization. Again, that doesn't mean women shouldn't work. It doesn't mean men shouldn't spend time with their kids. My wife works. I spend lots of time with the kids. But if you don't have those basic preconditions, civilization won't exist. If the feminists ran, everything would be done in 2 generations.
This question is from Bridget from Nebraska. She said, feminists preach day in and day out that women should be victims and choose their careers over husbands and families, and publicly shame women who believe otherwise. How do you think that young conservative women can fight back against the current feminist movement?
So the third wave feminist movement is really despicable. The first wave feminist movement, which said that women should have equal access to the workplace, should be able to work any job for which they are qualified, and should be able to make life decisions accordingly, I'm a big fan of. Right? As you may have heard, my wife is a doctor. My mother ran companies. She still runs companies. I'm a big fan of women working if they choose to work. When my wife finishes med school, she's probably going to work part-time because she wants to spend more time at home with the kids. The great lie of the feminist movement is, number one, that all women are going to choose the same thing, and number two, that the choice that is most common among women is the worst choice. Right? The choice that is most common among women is to spend a disproportionate amount of time with their kids. You know why? Because it's awesome. It's awesome. Women have a superpower. That superpower is they can create another human. Okay, and then they can nurse that other human with their own body. It's an amazing, amazing thing. Okay, and feminists have said this is the worst thing about being a woman, is that you actually have to do this sort of stuff. It's like if I could fly and people were like, oh, well, that's the worst thing about you. You create an entire new generation of human beings, and then you keep them alive yourself. Right? That's an unbelievable thing. And it's that nurturing that kids need. It's not just you as a source of nutrients. Okay, there are plenty of scientific studies that show what kids actually want is the bonding time with the parents. There's a very famous famous study of rhesus monkeys, where they gave rhesus monkeys, baby rhesus monkeys, the choice between a bottle. There was a machine that was not soft in any way, with a bottle and a basically stuffed animal that they could lie in. And the monkeys, these rhesus monkeys that were hungry, would choose to go lie with the stuffed animal rather than go to the machine that was feeding them the bottle. Every species is looking for bonding, and this is particularly true for mothers and kids. Mothers want to take more time off than fathers. Fact, end of story. Okay, this is just the way it works. That's not true for every woman or every man, right? It is true for most women, and on average it is true. Okay, so when my first child was born, my wife took off a full year. When my first child was born, I took off a full week. Right? When my second child was born, my wife took off 3 months. When my second child was born, I took off like 3 days. Okay, that's not because I don't want to spend time at home with my kids. I probably right now spend more time with my kids than my wife does because she's in residency. But it is also true that my wife desperately hates having to choose between working longer hours and being with our kids. It's a choice that men don't really seem to agonize over quite as much. And so when the feminist movement lies to people, and they say, the feminist movement lies to everybody all the time about this stuff. They say, first of all, women can have it all. No one can have it all in any endeavor. Right? You always have to make choices, and choices come with trade-offs. You can either work those extra hours and work for a partner, or you can actually bring up a child and do the most important work that any human being ever does, which is bring up your child correctly. Right? These choices actually matter, and they have consequences. And disparaging people who are going to be responsible for the future of civilization in order so that you can really, really make partner at that law firm by billing a few more hours, that seems like a piss-poor choice to me in a lot of cases. So, again, if you want to choose that, your business, it's a free country. But the idea that women are happier when they choose this is just not borne out by the evidence. It's certainly not borne out by the idea that when women hit 40, suddenly they're desperate to have a child. They don't have a kid, they're not married, but they've made partner, and now they're truly happy. Okay, that is just, as a general rule, not true. And there are a lot of people lying to themselves about it. Again, I think that the most important thing is to think individually about what you want from life. And everybody wants a different thing from life. But it is not a bad thing. It is a very, very good thing if you want to get married and have children. It is what makes civilization happen. It is women civilizing men and women bringing up children, and it is men protecting women and men protecting children, and that basic math is the foundation of Western civilization. That basic math is the foundation of any workable civilization. Again, that doesn't mean women shouldn't work. It doesn't mean men shouldn't spend time with their kids. My wife works. I spend lots of time with the kids. But if you don't have those basic preconditions, civilization won't exist. If the feminists ran, everything would be done in 2 generations.
Some radical leftists listening to Michael Moore and taking the fight against President Trump to new heights. A protester yesterday scaling the Statue of Liberty on Independence Day before being captured by police 89 feet in the air. She's part of the anti-Trump Rise and Resist group who were at the monument calling for the abolishment of ICE. Posting on Instagram, quote, "Rise and Resist is at the Statue of Liberty demanding Trump and the GOP hashtag abolish ICE, reunite families now, halt deportations, and end detention as a deterrent." Today, Therese Patricia Okumu pleaded not guilty at her federal court appearance. Afterwards, she addressed the press.
I climbed to the top of the Statue of Liberty not to empower anybody, but because I am a fucking idiot. I tried to climb to the top of the Statue of Liberty not only because I'm brain dead, but because I have no concept of reality. I would apologize, but let's be fair, I'll do it again because I'm stupid.
Here with me now, Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the DailyWire.com. Ben, 2 hours she was perched on that statue. What did you think of this stunt?
I mean, it's idiotic. They then had to evacuate the entire island because they decided to do the stunt. The real issue with the stunt is not that someone is pulling a public relations ploy in order to get media attention. People do this sort of thing all the time. The point is this actually productive for her cause? Like, let's say that you were her, you were she, and you thought that you were going to bring attention to this particular cause. Is the best way to do that to climb up on the Statue of Liberty and annoy everyone in the country on the 4th of July?
What's the answer to that question? Did she win over any supporters with this?
No, I mean, the only people who are into this are the people who already support her. But I guess that's where we are in the country at this point, is that everybody's attempting to rev up the base more than they are attempting to win over people in the middle. And that's particularly true for folks on the left who think the louder they scream, the more people they're going to win over. It seems like precisely the opposite is true. It seems the louder they scream, the more people are looking at the Trump administration and saying, well, at least they're not shutting down the Statue of Liberty on the 4th of July.
Hi.
Howdy.
Fact number one. Transgender is not a disease. This is not my opinion. This is facts from the World Health Organization and the American Psychologists Association. Just like gay people don't have a disease. Fact number two. Rich kids stay rich, poor kids stay poor.
It's not true.
Out of 1,800 billionaires in the world, 12 of them are black. Where you come from, where you grow up, how much your parents earn, whether your parents were married plays a major role in determining where your
is there a
life
question
you
mark at
end
the
up.
end?
Fact number three, I would just like to remind you that hate speech is not free speech.
Yes, it is.
And my question is, since facts don't care about your feelings, why did you use false facts?
Okay, so none of the facts that I used are false. First of all, yes. No, okay, first of all, would you like the answer? Okay, so the three facts you mentioned, you talked about transgenderism. First of all, until 5 minutes ago, the DSM specifically defined transgenderism as a disorder. It defined it as gender identity disorder, now calls it gender dysmorphia, which doesn't even make sense. It says that depression is the actual problem, not the actual gender disorder, which again does not explain why the transgender suicide rate is upward of 40%, and the actual suicide rate for the rest of the American population is lower than 3%. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, you talked about income inequality, and you suggested that all wealth is inherited. This is nonsense. According to the IRS statistics, if you are born into the bottom 20% of wage earners in the United States, you will not be one of the bottom 20% of wage earners in the United States. 90% of people will not be within 15 years. There's tremendous wage mobility in the United States of America. Plus, there is not a group of people who just sit at the very top and stay there. People move up and down, in and out of the 1%. 1% just defines the line of income. It doesn't define the people who are in that 1% of income. I've been in the 1%. I've been out of the 1%. It will happen to lots of people. People who are older tend to be more likely to be in the 1%. They weren't once in the 1%. What happened? Okay, so that's number two. Number three, you say hate speech is not free speech. It depends how you define hate speech. The only speech that is not free speech is speech that overtly defends or pushes violence. Specifically, speech that is generating violence, right? That's the only type of speech that's not hate speech. If I say things you don't like, that's not hate speech. And if you think that it is hate speech, you're a fascist. End of story.
Has Israel somehow lost more in the eyes of the world than Hamas has? Here to debate that is Ben Shapiro. He's the editor-in-chief of truthrevolt.org, and Rula Jabrial, a foreign policy analyst and author of the novel Miral. Thanks to both of you for being here. Ben, I want to start with you. Is it your impression that in the court of public opinion that Israel has somehow taken more of a hit during these 27 days than Hamas has?
There's no question. I mean, Hamas is a terrorist group, and people going in understood Hamas to be a terrorist group. Israel, thanks to outlets like CNN, has been turned into the villain in this particular scenario, and a moral equivalency has been drawn between the two groups. If Hamas could have come up with any sort of outlet that could have created a will to kill more Jewish babies and Palestinian babies, CNN would have been it. I mean, CNN is a key factor in drawing the same sort of equivalency that Hamas hopes to
hold
win
on a
from this
second.
entire
I just want to stop you right there, because
Sure.
you're saying that because CNN has interviewed Palestinian families and shown Palestinian children who have been wounded or killed, that somehow CNN is saying that Hamas is okay. I don't think that those two are equivalent. We're not allowed to show the civilians caught in the crossfire?
Of course you're allowed to show civilians caught in the crossfire. You should also mention all the restrictions that Hamas puts on your reporting inside the Gaza Strip. You should also mention all the context with regard to Hamas putting children in harm's way. You should also routinely mention the fact that Hamas's charter calls for the destruction not only of the state of Israel, but for the murder of Jews across the world, which of course CNN does not.
I think you're wrong about the media. I believe certainly that CNN has shown both sides, but there is an impression, Ben, and I understand why you feel this way, that certainly when it comes to celebrities, that they're giving Hamas a pass.
Well, and this, I think, is sort of the point with regard to showing both sides. When you're showing two sides as equivalent, and your idea of balance is to show Israel's side and then Hamas's side, and then claim that that balance has been achieved, well, that's the sort of media coverage that would have led to the West losing World War II. So I'm not a big fan of that sort of balance.
You're the one who's actually equating Hamas and Palestinian civilians. Those are not equal.
The hell I am.
Why would you do that? Hamas
In
is
what
a
way?
terror. Because you're saying that when the media shows civilians being killed, they're somehow propping up Hamas. That's not true.
That is not what I said.
You're saying
I did not say that at all. I said you feel free to show civilians being killed. What I suggested is that you should provide all the context for those civilians being killed. And as far as the other woman who's on with me, I'm not familiar with her name. You know, as far as her personal insults, I mean, I'm not going to get into the quality of the movies that are made based on her books. I think that we can all stay away from that. The transgender movement is not arguing that people who have particular brain structures are female. What they are arguing is that if you identify as female, this means you are female. They're not saying we can stick you in an MRI machine and do an objective test as to whether you are female. They are saying, which might actually be a plausible scientific argument, right? In the same way that a Y chromosome or an X chromosome we could actually scientifically test. Right? If we just found you on the street and we just drew blood, we could tell if you're male or female. Well, in this version, we could just stick you in an MRI machine and tell if you're male or female by looking at your brain. If that ends up being true, okay, fine. But that's not the argument the left is making. The argument the left is making is that I have been male my entire life. And if today I turn around and say I am female, then I am female. Right? Caitlyn Jenner was a man his entire life and is still a man now, because declaring yourself female does not make you female. By the way, scientifically speaking, this looks a lot more like body dysmorphia than it does like being a female. Also, just because your brain functions in a particular way does not mean that you've had, even if you want to say that it's societally defined what it is to be a female, you have not had the thoughts, experiences, and frankly, bodily function of a female your entire life. It's such a weird idea. Like if you said that I am a chicken, and my brain functions more like a chicken than it does like a human brain, how would you even know that you're a chicken? Right? If you knew that you were a chicken, you would be a chicken. Right? There is no way for you to know what it's like to be something that you physically cannot be.